the top 12 are all on mediums, apart from Carlos Sainz, who's on the hard compound tyre. All of the tyre, 3 compounds, are represented on the grid. Ricardo, surprisingly, starting on the soft tyre. We think that won't last a great deal of time, but there is a high chance of safety cars here. 4 out of 5 of the last Grand Prix here have had a safety car. That is mostly mediums, apart from Joe Guan Yu and hard compound tyres on the back row of the grid. So the top 6 all on medium, closely followed by Sainz, who hope to run longer. If you see, they've got 2 new sets of hard compounds at Ferrari. If you get an early safety car, you're kind of wasting a set of them, aren't you? But so that's what they've split their strategy on the 2 Ferraris.
Top 3 on the grid, Martin, identical to last year. So Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton, they all know how it plays out.
In the air for the chasing pack, and it's increasing as well behind you for others. So yes, if he leads into Eau Rouge, he probably won't lead into the braking zone of turn 5. And Perez knows that all too well because he's lost out that way as well, hasn't he?
He certainly has. Right, we're underway for the formation lap. Martin Brundle alongside me in the commentary box. Bernie Collins at Sky Race Control, and all the talk today, Bernie, high track temperatures and what it might do to the tyres in this race.
Yes, hello Crofty, delighted to be here with you in Race Control. This is going to be a really exciting race because the teams are going to have to react to the conditions they have today. They've not had these conditions all weekend. Higher track temperature. High chance of safety car.
The laps fly past her, but if you do have a problem,
Getting on with it on that formation lap. Lewis Hamilton was backing the pack up a little bit, and Leclerc and Perez caught their heads, and it's all concertinaed a bit at the front now. If you want to ride on board at the start of this race with any of the 20 drivers, you can do so. You need your Sky Sports app and your Sky Sports login. We've got all the onboards and the team radio too, and that could be an interesting conversation you might want to tune into if you're watching on Sky Q, Sky Glass or Sky Stream. And now 3 places here. Charles Leclerc leads them through Radion and down the Camel Straight. There goes Sergio Perez trying to make an early move on Lewis Hamilton, who's in second place. George Russell's getting keen on Oscar Piastri. Hamilton holds off into second. Piastri and Russell side by side through the chicane. Russell has to back out. Looks like that's Alex Albon also taken to the runoff area. What a dramatic start.
It was Norris getting a very poor start by coming out of the first corner on the gravel, as you saw. What helped Charles Leclerc there is that Perez and Hamilton were really fighting hard through the first corner and down the hill, and that gave him a little bit of breathing space, which means he did keep the lead in turn 5.
Max Verstappen behind Alex Albon. He's up in the 9th place. They've already cleared Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. As we see Alonso coming through now, and he's got place at the start as Lewis Hamilton went wheel to wheel with him into the source and then down to Eau Rouge.
هاي الصوت على الهادي هاي الجلسة ايه
touching distance to the bus stop chicane we go now, and there is Charles Leclerc in the lead of this race, and Max Verstappen trying to make a move on Alex Albon, going round the outside at the chicane. Lovely move by Max Verstappen. He's made up another place.
Yeah, that's the sort of moves he needs to make without damaging his tyres as he comes through the pack. So Max, needs to really press on but not take too much life out of the tyres at this phase. And you saw the cars smoking through Blanchimont. That's because they're laden with fuel, and here they go again into Eau Rouge. They will be lifting the throttle through Eau Rouge during the race to save the plank wear underneath and save tyre life as well. They will not take it as fast as they can.
Lewis Hamilton maybe having a look, getting a slipstream on Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari under pressure and being overtaken by Lando Norris. Now Norris was ahead going into the chicane, but he went wide and he's given the place straight back again to Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo down in 14th has lost a place and he's been overtaken by Lance Stroll, who might just have been repassed by Ricciardo.
Verstappen already on the back of Norris then with that squabble. So that was a key moment for Norris. He needed to get past the Ferrari of Sainz, who's on the hard comp.
A very slow-moving Sauber of Zhou Guan Yu, who started 19th, and he's just coming down towards Puon. Looks like he's freewheeling down there and no power.
I'm losing power, guys. losing hydraulic with it. I try to bring it back.
Well, he's going to struggle to get up the hill, I would have thought. He's got a very long way to go, Martin.
He has, and if the team sense that's not getting back to the pits, they're obliged to get him to pull over somewhere sensible. Otherwise, we'll be seeing a safety car, at least a virtual safety car. But at the moment, Zhou Guanyu is still moving.
He's just got to the Fanier chicane. The pace that Lewis Hamilton and the pack have got, they'll catch him up on this lap before he gets to the pits. He'll have to watch out just a touch. This is Lando Norris. Max Verstappen right behind him. Norris has got DRS because he's within a second of Carlos Sainz. Verstappen has got DRS because he's within a second of Lando Norris. And that DRS giving you an extra 12 kilometres an hour of extra pace when you are within a second of the car in front.
And what Lewis Hamilton can do now, we saw how good he was at this in Silverstone when he won, but just look after his tyres. He's not in the turbulent air anymore. Babysit those tyres to get rid of a bit of fuel, get a bit further into the Grand Prix, because at the moment, Verstappen in 8th is only 5 seconds off the lead. So 5 seconds covers the top 8, and that is key for later on.
Zhou Guanyu, last classified finisher in 4 of the last 6 races. Looked like he was going to be the first retirement here today, but I think he's got going again. They might have found a default to sort the problems out in his Sauber. He's not gone into the pits, he's carried on, he's completed the lap, and we are on lap 4 of 44. And Lewis Hamilton, for the second time this season, leads a Grand Prix. The only other time was Silverstone, and he went on to win that race. Martin.
Yeah, Control-Alt-Delete there, and off he goes. No further investigation on Alex Albon. He didn't gain any positions, and Zhou Guanyu confirming there. Okay, to continue. And so, no safety car to intervene then, and still the pack are pretty much either just leaving the last chicane or just entering it. You can see there for yourselves.
Carlos Sainz started in 7th place. He's up to 6th. And as you mentioned, those hard compound tyres holding on very nicely for him. This might have been a strategy masterstroke for Ferrari here to put Sainz on the hard tyres at the start.
Where he was on the detection, Leclerc might still have DRS. Doesn't look like he has. And nor is Perez on Leclerc either. And that's why Piastri's having a look at the inside.
I was going to say, Piastri's got DRS, and he was a couple of car lengths from making a move there on Sergio Perez, but he stays in 4th place. And unlike last year, he's got to lap 5 in this race. He started 5th last year, and he was pretty much out of it after tangling with Carlos Sainz at the first corner. Let's have a look then at the charge towards the source and a replay of the start. Watch Hamilton from 3rd. Gets a great getaway.
Yeah, he really did, didn't he? And that stopped Perez for his sort of cunning plan, wasn't it? Tuck him behind the Ferrari. But Lewis Hamilton was there, and this is where you can see Lando Norris dipping his left rear tyre into the gravel, sort of by himself, really. And that is what surprised Perez, to find Lewis Hamilton there, who was yielding nothing. As they squabble a little bit wide through La Source, it gave Leclerc the breathing space he needed as they're still going at it side by side down the hill.
Sergio tried to do exactly what he did last year, but this time Lewis Hamilton was there, and that stopped his momentum. We'll look now from the helicam. We can see how close it all got, and that's when Lando Norris lost momentum, passed by Russell, passed by Sainz, and almost passed by Alonso, who got checked by Norris there.
Yeah, Fernando Alonso had to get out of it, and that saved Norris losing another place or two. Max Verstappen was so careful through the first corner. He was almost in danger getting run into from behind. So again then, Hamilton and Perez sort of holding each other up a little bit as Piastri fancied a run past George Russell, took the place, and obviously nobody was concerned about that because it was Russell off the road.
Yep, went off the road and realised he couldn't stay ahead. Lewis Hamilton has broken the DRS threat of Charles Leclerc. He is over a second ahead. Piastri still chasing down behind Sergio Perez. One McLaren chasing a Red Bull, and then there's a Red Bull chasing a McLaren, with Verstappen still very much in touch with Lando Norris. Bernie, to you.
Yeah, so quickly on the Ferrari strategy that you mentioned there, Crofty. Because they've split the cars, they are getting very, very valuable information for Leclerc at this stage of the race.
And we are still at a loss as to what that might be, but let's hope it's nothing serious.
Yeah, it's always a worry
for the first stint, and they've said that there's plenty of wear still on them. So they've reassured Max that it's going to be absolutely fine, no problem for them running the medium at the end.
And that is what I was talking about, of not leaving any grip, not bringing any grip back to the pits with you. Box, 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 pit, pit, pit for Lando Norris. And this kind of feels a little bit out of sequence to me, but let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, you're going to lose about 18 and a half seconds, or 19 seconds for the pit stop. He's coming out behind Max Verstappen and ahead of Kevin Magnussen if everything goes according to plan. He stops on his marks, the pit crew do their job, and away he goes, all very nice indeed. 2.3 seconds, quick stop there. Verstappen into turn one, as Norris at 80 kilometers an hour on the inside at La Source, will now get back out onto the track again. What he has got is a few seconds between himself and Max so that he can nurse these tyres, bring them in under no pressure, Martin, and then for McLaren, their hope is that he can get the overtaking done later in the stint when he's going to need to.
Yeah, I don't think warm-up's a problem on these tyres like it was in Hungary last weekend, because you've got such high-speed corners and generating an awful lot of energy. So, as you say, that's popped Lando right to the back of the leading bunch. But at least he's got the right tyres, and he's got a couple more laps of life in them.
I suppose if he'd have come out, if he'd have boxed a couple of laps ago, Bernie Collins, we'll just watch Carlos Sainz for a moment. Kicking up the gravel a little bit, going way too deep into the first part of Stavolo there. That's our race leader, just struggling there for grip under braking. He doesn't want much more of that. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon on his teammates Pierre Gasly.
Diff in -1. These are good laps. Hamilton 47.9.
You have total trust that car in front of you will not suddenly slow down, break down or anything, because you're committed, you're flat out, and that's the only way to do it. But that's a nice overtake from the livery, the newly liveried race livery of that.
I hope so. I hope so.
And consider engine braking +1 as well. Engine braking +1.
If we want to do that, then we'll worry about it.
Okay, Bernie Collins, tell us about McLaren's strategy.
Yes, well, I was actually going to come in a little bit on that. For Carlos, lost him 3 seconds in that lap, Crofty, and he had a bit of margin to Norris at that stage, and maybe that's why Ferrari have extended a little bit and then not boxed next lap, because effectively now he has been undercut by Norris just because he lost that time in a single lap where he could have been trying to defend. Yeah, the McLaren are saying that they're trying to undercut Ferrari, maybe to push them a little bit into a pit stop, but they have actually now at this stage undercut Sainz, and it will be.
Trying to get them, mate. What do you think?
Have a go. Yeah, go and attack. Don't worry about managing your tyres. Bernie, back to you.
Yeah, and I was just going to come in a little bit then on Verstappen. I'll pick up off that radio. Verstappen's problem at this stage is that he has Perez just ahead of Russell. So
Easy with saturation, mid-corner, turn 18. Next corner.
DRS, and that is hampering Verstappen's overtaken opportunities. So can Red Bull do anything about that? Because Norris is going to very quickly start to close that gap.
There's no doubt about it. Max hasn't had a magic carpet ride through the pack, has he? Whether it's back markers, whether it's front runners, nothing's really fallen to his hand.
Hamilton slowly catching Sainz, who stayed out on hard, lapping in 48.8.
Fresher tyres, because you're on fresher tyres than those that you're chasing. Just a thought about this. Had McLaren have stopped Lando Norris 2 or 3 laps earlier, Martin, he'd have come out right behind Max Verstappen, but in that DRS train, where he would be a lot closer, and that would wear his tyres a bit as well. So maybe that was part of McLaren's thinking.
Could well be. And now, should Verstappen get past Russell, which won't be the work of a moment, knowing George, he's pretty feisty and rightly so, but he's got a lovely slipstream down the hill as Verstappen. He'll charge his battery up. Russell will know he's coming, but how's this going to look when they get into Le Com? We're about to find out. Slipstream, DRS open, DRS a little bit later this year. It's definitely calmed down some of the overtakes up there, hasn't it? And look at that, nowhere near it. So George using, as Bernie said, the DRS of the other Red Bull in front of him, and no doubt his battery in a very helpful way as well. But I wonder what, should he pass George, what will Red Bull do between the two Red Bull drivers?
Well, it's a very good point. Here's Pierre Gasly, the Haas in front of him. Makes a very nice move there. Plenty of room because Nico Hülkenberg wasn't necessarily fighting that. The situation we've got, Martin, is that
but he's also doing really good lap times comparing Oscar Piastri's engineers just informed Oscar about that and said Sainz still from the hard tyres from the start, still doing high 148s, low 149s, whereas Piastri is a 148.1. So yeah, Sainz showing that either the degradation on the hard tyre is very low or that he's just managing them beautifully.
Hülkenberg, who was one of the early stoppers, has been on these hard tyres for 11 laps now, just lost a place to Valtteri Bottas. I wonder if his tyres are starting to go off. We're riding on board with Daniel Ricciardo. This is a nice little battle, this Albon and Ricciardo, who both managed to jump Fernando Alonso in the pit stops. They're running the mediums at the moment. Alonso, Ocon, Gasly on the hard tyre in the scrap for the minor points places.
We are on lap 19.
Between Williams, between RB with Ricciardo and with Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso, and Alpine with Esteban Ocon, and we can see how Valtteri Bottas managed to get past Nico Hülkenberg fairly straightforward into the chicane.
A bit of wiggling around there considering they're doing a couple of 100 miles an hour, but they all survived it. And here we go then. So once again, look at George Russell with DRS behind, and there's no doubt about it. Perez is helping keep Russell in front of Verstappen and almost pulling away a little bit.
Perez is, we're led to believe, Martin, performing for his Red Bull future. And he's performing in a way that he wants to show them just exactly what he can do in terms of getting his car as far up the grid on qualifying and as far up the field on race day as he possibly can.
Piastri's, here we go. Piastri's pace has just faded a little bit since the early laps on the hard compound tyres. Don't know if he pushed him a bit too hard, but he's sort of settled in now around and about the pace of Hamilton and Leclerc.
Carlos Sainz leads. He has still yet to pit, and if he pitted now, he'd come out behind Lando Norris. Lewis Hamilton, who was the early leader after overtaking Sergio Perez, runs in second and is still lapping a second clear of Carlos Sainz, who is finally going to get rid of these hard compound tyres. They did give it a couple more laps at Ferrari. He's coming in at the end of this one.
As always, you loved those tyres half an hour ago. Now you can't wait to see the back of them.
Right, on board with Esteban Ocon. We heard Lance Stroll saying the Aston Martin speed in the straight line was a bit too slow. And Esteban Ocon, who was the fastest guy through the speed trap in qualifying in that first sector, showing just how much pace the Alpine has in that part of the track compared to Alonso's Aston Martin.
Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing that the pack have caught up with Red Bull, haven't we? Definitely, yeah. You know, we've watched Max just side through this lot before, almost at will. Sainz pits from the lead onto the medium compounds. Will he be able to get those to the end of the race? Bearing in mind, of course, the track's rubbering in a little bit. They're approaching now half tanks of fuel rather than full tanks of fuel. If he can babysit those, He'll be doing very well.
Lando Norris is now 2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. We're told if you're about half a second quicker in terms of your lap pace, you've got a chance of overtaking the car in front. We'll see if Norris has got that pace on the Red Bull. Meanwhile, Perez under pressure from George Russell this time, and George Russell has now finally cleared his man. Now, he's been keeping within DRS range for some laps, and finally he had the opportunity to go for it, and he did. Russell's up to 4th now. Do Red Bull tell Perez to let Verstappen past?
They have to, don't they? They have to. They cannot let if Max, we saw Sergio there, giving it plenty of throttle, the back end of his car complaining a little bit. And I think Max will have a very good chance anyway on the next lap. But they do not want to waste more than a tenth or two, if they can help it, let alone a second or two, while they get Verstappen through, because it looks like it's going to happen anyway.
I think for Verstappen to finish ahead of Norris today, you're absolutely bang on there, Martin. They just can't waste any time here. Norris has got the pace on Max Verstappen. He's a second a lap quicker at the moment. And all the time Verstappen spends behind his teammate is just allowing Norris to get ever closer. And look, the gap now almost in DRS range for Norris on Verstappen. So can Verstappen try and get past Perez through Blanchimont and up towards the bus stop chicane? Look how George Russell has pulled clear of Sergio Perez, who's coming into the pits. So it's no team orders in terms of let him pass, but Perez is called into the pits, and that then releases Verstappen in the nick of time.
Well, that solved the problem, didn't it? Doesn't feel like he needs a pit stop now, does it? That's as the hard compound tyres go on.
Well, that's half race distance. Is this hard tyres to the end of the race then for Sergio Perez? They did bring him in fairly quickly there. Perez had done how many laps?
11. 10? He'd done 11 in the first stint, 10 in the second stint. You'd think they would have gone a little bit further, but anyway, it solved their problem, didn't it, with Verstappen?
Bernie Collins, to you.
Yeah, it's exactly the right thing, I think, for Red Bull to have done in that instance. It solves the Talon 1 driver to move over instance. It gets Perez onto these hard tyres that he has, because he did a medium tyre middle stint, whereas Verstappen's actually reversed in that policy. So Verstappen, as we know, has the medium to go on at the end. And because we've just seen Sainz and the Ferrari do a very long hard stint, 21, and still get good lap times at the end, it means that Perez has a chance to begin now to undercut these cars ahead and give them a bit of a headache and allow Verstappen a lovely free track ahead.
Intriguing.
Next up, we're watching Norris, who's almost within DRS range now of Max Verstappen. There is the fight I'm talking about, and Verstappen himself is out of DRS to Russell now. So if Norris has got extra pace, now's the time to use it.
Hamilton leads 2 seconds, the gap between himself and Leclerc.
We have very blow on the straights.
Maybe Sergio was complaining of a potential deployment for the energy
we heard
system
about that
at the
early
start.
doors, didn't we?
Yeah. Maybe that's still hampering him, just a touch on that one. Piastri in third with George Russell behind him, and Russell on the last lap about 4/10 slower than Oscar Piastri. Then comes Verstappen in fifth, and Lando Norris in sixth and in DRS range. Now Red Bull are very efficient with their DRS, McLaren think less so. Let's see how this pans out.
But we know that McLaren trimmed the car a little bit, assuming a dry race, so he's quite a long way behind going into Eau Rouge, and releases off the top of Radion. That's a lot of work to do if he wants to have half a chance of overtaking. When he gets down to Le Comte, he's a bit too far behind.
Yeah, just a touch. Even with that DRS, he still needed probably another 75 metres, Martin, of DRS zone to try and get past.
Well, it's definitely killed the easy overtakes, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Changing that DRS.
Which I think is a good thing. Plus, you've got a tailwind as well on that straight, which doesn't help as much when it comes to overtaking. So the battle for fifth continues on. Out in front then, still Lewis Hamilton. Now that Sainz has pitted, Hamilton is back controlling this race once more. And as I said, it's the second time this season he's led a Grand Prix, and the other one was the British Grand Prix, and he went on to win that. Meanwhile, on board with Daniel Ricciardo getting an overtake done. So with Ricciardo getting an overtake done on Logan Sargent. Ricciardo has pitted twice in this race. Sargent just the one so far, and then there is Yuki Tsunoda now right behind the Williams for that scrap. So Ricciardo started on the soft tyre. They pulled him in early, and he's pitted early for a second time and trying to undercut the likes of Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon. They're the guys he's really racing with.
Indeed, so that's put Perez then. We'll keep an eye on his lap times. He's fastest man in the middle sector of the entire Grand Prix, so Perez is enjoying the grip of those. Can he haul himself back onto the tail of the front runners when they pit stop? He's got a lot of work to do, and he's still got to get those tyres quite a long way, hasn't he, Sergio Perez, even though he should be fine now.
He's undercut George Russell. When Russell pits, he'll come out behind Sergio Perez, but once again, the trade-off is on much fresher tyres. Just like with Lando Norris, who pitted after a lot of the front runners, and McLaren hoping that these fresher tyres of his will give him a chance to get past Max Verstappen, but he's nowhere near making a move on the Kemmel Straight on this occasion. Now, I said Daniel Ricciardo had pitted earlier. Williams are covering now that pit stop with Alex Albon into the pits, and we can just see a lock-up there from Lando Norris, and that would have cost him valuable time in his pursuit of Max Verstappen.
And made his tyres very dirty out there, and it's also, it can be puncture territory if you're not careful, where shrapnel from support racers tend to get swept up or thrown towards, so it's not a good place to be. At the moment, he's regrouped.
Easy to say, Martin, he's just got to be patient on this glorious summer's afternoon, but it's very difficult to be patient at 200 miles an hour. Here's Yuki Tsunoda on Logan Sargent towards Lecombe, and is he going to try and nose ahead going through that chicane? Is there room for him to do it? Not quite. Logan Sargent fends off Yuki Tsunoda and keeps hold of 17th place. Ted, down to you.
So with Max Verstappen still behind George Russell, albeit 2 seconds, so he's dropped back a bit now, hasn't he, Verstappen, from Russell? And the other Mercedes, it's all smooth sailing for Lewis Hamilton at the moment, keeping the gap to Charles Leclerc at a couple of seconds. And as we just clock on to lap 25, it's 20 laps to go. Lewis is just being told by his engineer, around 20 laps to go, and that is precisely the distance that Sainz did on his hard tyres. So Lewis being told, this is all working out well for us, think it's working out well for you, and the second pit stop window is just about to open, Crofty.
You had a chat with Bono on your grid walk, Martin Brundle. Peter Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer. Did he seem a confident man today?
He seemed very calm, didn't he? And that's the sort of radio call we used to hear from Lewis when he was dominating championships, isn't it? And you know what? He was pretty much fastest on the previous lap. There are some, like Sainz and Perez, on fresher tyres, late 1:47s, but it was a 48.0 for Lewis Hamilton, 108 seconds, and that's very good pace up front. So we need to start almost changing our perspective here of, can anybody start catching Hamilton and Leclerc?
As I mentioned at the top of this race, 11 years to the day since Lewis Hamilton won his first race for Mercedes in Hungary in 2013. He is leading here, the Belgium Grand Prix, a race that he has won 4 times in the past. Could he be on for a 5th this afternoon? Bernie Collins, to you.
Yeah, so Perez is very slowly closing the gap to Hamilton, Leclerc, Piastri.
Leclerc's coming in.
I was just about to say they're going to have to decide whether they're going to have to cover this or not from Perez and get that final hard tyre onto the end.
So Lewis Hamilton continues on his way, and the gap was just over 2 seconds when Leclerc dived into the pits. It's a long lap here, Martin, but 2 seconds might be marginal for Ferrari to get the undercut done here if Lewis pits at the end of this lap.
I think it's what we know as hammer time, isn't it? From the past, this is an in-lap that Lewis needs to pull out all the stops. They'll have to cover that stop of Leclerc's off, and they're all in the 1:47s now. It's a 3.4 second stop for Charles Leclerc, which is not particularly special, so that helps Mercedes' cause a little bit. So Leclerc now needs to pin it if he wants to get track position.
If Mercedes think that they've got the tyres to go to the end of the race by pitting at the end of this lap, I think that slow stop might just have made their decision for them, because they can pit and stay out ahead of Charles Leclerc, and then there's one less job for Lewis Hamilton to do between now and the end of the race in terms of cars he might or might not need to overtake. Why was it a slow stop, I wonder?
It's on his marks. Don't know, do you? Just slow, wasn't it? I don't think there was anything.
Rear left might have been a bit slow.
A bit late to the party. Yeah, it just it looked a tiny bit lumpy. It didn't look like there was a specific problem, did it?
Daniel Ricciardo trying to overtake Kevin Magnussen. That's not really Ricciardo's race. Alex Albon is Ricciardo's race, and after that pit stop before Albon, he is ahead, as you can see on the track. Mercedes are boxing Lewis Hamilton. Not a surprise, that one. And they just hope at the moment, Lewis Hamilton fans, Mercedes fans, that they can just have a nice, easy pit stop and get back out ahead of Charles Leclerc. They're thinking about a one-stop on George Russell's side of the garage, definitely a two-stop for Lewis Hamilton. Piastri goes through, takes the lead of this race. Russell goes through, Verstappen goes through, Norris goes through, Sainz and Charles Leclerc is just going through the final chicane, 2.4 seconds, so 1 second faster than Leclerc's pit stop. That's Carlos Sainz making his way around the source. Charles Leclerc is just behind him. Out into the sunshine comes Lewis Hamilton. He is ahead comfortably of Charles Leclerc. That's the man he's racing.
It is. That's the net lead then again. Piastri is the new leader, but will stop again. Well, if he doesn't, he'll be short of grip at the end of the Grand Prix. So that was key then. Mercedes reacted quickly. He's about to catch the teammate of the man pursuing him. But he's obliged to get out of... Well, no, he's not, of course, is he? Because he's not being lapped. It's for position. So Sainz can come into play quite well here for the Ferrari team.
Yeah, can Carlos Sainz hold Lewis Hamilton up, or on the fresher tyres will Lewis Hamilton breeze past him quite easily? Can Sainz play the team game to disrupt Hamilton in favour of Charles Leclerc? Here's Alex Albon. Through Radion we go. We saw Daniel Ricciardo get past Kevin Magnussen on the previous lap. Albon's trying to do the same thing here, and you can see how he's gaining with that slipstream and the DRS, and he's ahead going into the chicane. Just a little bit unsteady, but he keeps that place.
Yeah, well, he's leaving more than a car's width on the inside. Didn't want to get tagged there, so good driving. You've got to do all of that. Keep an eye on your rival at a couple of 100 miles an hour and not get the braking point wrong. So you need, I don't know, 3 eyes at that point, basically, to get that right. And good move there from Alex Albon. But this Lewis Hamilton, that victory at Silverstone has just revitalised him, hasn't it? He drove a great race in Hungary last weekend and just really seems to have sort of energised him again.
Brilliant. 200th career podium for Lewis Hamilton in Hungary, and has moved into the top 6 in the championship for the first time this season.
This looks good, Oscar. This looks good. Let's go.
Quick, 47.0 for Piastri, so he's been holding back.
Beware the quiet man, Oscar Piastri, who's just been released now into some lovely clean air, leading the Grand Prix, and has just banged in the fastest lap of the race.
Leclerc's on a 47.0 as well. We're about, we'll find out what Hamilton's going to be doing on those tyres a lap later, but Hamilton personal best in the first sector. So that's sort of a benchmark time. I don't think that's going to shock anybody in front of him, not the two drivers in front of him, a 47.0, but that's really handy from Piastri.
Meanwhile, Piastri's teammate...
Last lap was purple.
It goes without saying, but clean air is king.
He rather likes it out in front, the 115th different winner in Formula One. This is Hamilton now right on the tail of Carlos Sainz.
It is, isn't it? So Sainz is doing his job for the team, as Leclerc, though, still 2.5 seconds behind. And this will affect, obviously, Hamilton's opening lap to get a feel for just how fast he can be at this phase.
I'm just about to say, Piastri's teammate, Lando Norris, still behind Max Verstappen, and within DRS range, but not close enough to try and make a move. And I wonder, Bernie Collins, as Carlos Sainz is about to stop, how this is playing out with McLaren's strategy this afternoon.
Yeah, very important from Piastri, that information. The purple is the best information you can get on the pit wall of how the tyres are performing. And it's very interesting, the comment from Russell, consider the one stop. He's on 17-lap old hard tyres, and he thinks they can go for the next 15 laps. So can Piastri do something similar? The purple certainly would say so.
It suggests so. Verstappen into the pits, Sainz into the pits. Piastri leads, Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc, Perez, and Verstappen in 7th, with Carlos Sainz behind him.
Yes, we know Verstappen's got to go onto the mediums. The purple, if you're new to Formula One, welcome, but the purple means you're the fastest driver. Magenta, I think, is the official colour they give it in terms of you've just done the fastest lap of the Grand Prix.
This is a fascinating race this afternoon, with different strategies playing out, tyre offsets, they call it, people pitting earlier than others. Oscar Piastri, a new leader of this race. Carlos Sainz has led the race. Charles Leclerc has led the race. Lewis Hamilton has led the race. Who is going to take the checkered flag as the winner? Ted, down to you.
A couple of things. First of all, George Russell's about to be undercut. Obviously, Max Verstappen just pitted onto the medium tyres. Monster outlap. George is going to be undercut, so maybe he'll try. He has no option, maybe, Bernie, to go for the end. And Lando Norris, I thought that message from Piastri about free air in front of us for our car is king. That's what just hasn't worked for Lando today. He's always been behind another car in front of him.
Yeah,
and now he's pitting.
He is finally managing to pit to cover off Max Verstappen, but it might be a little too late once again for him on this one. Verstappen's just gone purple in the middle sector. Piastri and Russell go through. Norris makes his way into the pit lane. This is crucial for his race as to where he comes out. And it won't be ahead of Max Verstappen, will it, though, be ahead of Carlos Sainz? I think that's what McLaren are hoping for here. Lovely stop by the McLaren team. They've done their bit, 2.4 seconds. Sainz just making his way through the final chicane as the two Red Bulls come down the main pit straight here. On the inside, pinch off a few meters if you're Lando Norris, coming back out onto the racetrack, and he is then ahead of Carlos Sainz. But once again, Martin, he's got to try and get past Max Verstappen.
He has. Perez then a little bit out of sync now, as Verstappen has to try to catch him. And remember, they pitted Perez quite early. He's undercut his teammate. And again, I think the team will now want him to move out of the way. PDQ.
The difference for Norris this time around, of course, yes, he's got to try and get past Max Verstappen, but on this occasion, Martin, they're on different tyres.
Yeah, agreed.
And we'll find out whether the medium or the hard was the better choice.
Yeah, they've asked Lando on the, and he'll let him through down here, presumably. Yes, he does. They've asked Lando on the radio, any problems? He's, nope. So that's all she wrote at the moment for Lando. Obviously lost out, dipping his left rear in the gravel on the exit of the first corner of the Grand Prix. And it's sort of compromising for the rest of the afternoon, hasn't it?
It has, rather. They've had to rethink the strategy on that one. Oscar Piastri is coming in, which means George Russell will be the latest driver to lead this Belgium Grand Prix. It'll be a Mercedes 1-2, with Hamilton now running in second place, Charles Leclerc chasing him in third, then Max Verstappen. Now he's past Sergio Perez. Can Perez hold up Lando Norris? I wonder. Oh, Piastri went very long indeed there. That slowed him down by about 2 seconds.
That's really bad news for him, because we've got he's got to try and stay ahead of Perez and Verstappen.
This is going to be really, really tight, isn't it? As round at 80 kilometers an hour Piastri goes, he does manage to stay ahead of Verstappen and Perez and Norris. But he went way, way long in his box there. And Lando Norris is now right on the tail of Sergio Perez. I wondered, could Perez hold up Lando Norris and disturb his race? You wouldn't imagine he's going to hold him up too much here. The Red Bull ahead, but as we emerge from behind the trees, the McLaren is alongside and then ahead. Didn't hold him up at all there. Lando Norris back into 6th place. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Yeah, Oscar went so hot into the pit box, he absolutely boffed into the guy with the front jack, and it was that man who actually absorbed all the impact and minimized the effect. Yes, he lost a second and a half, 2 seconds, but great stopping work for that McLaren front jack man. He absolutely took the impact, and really the McLaren crew dealt very, very well with that, with Oscar's little mistake there.
Totally agree with you, Ted. They did well to cope with that. He locked his right front on the apron just as he was coming into the pit box area, and that is why he went deep, Piastri.
I once spoke to a front jack man about what they did. I said, I think you're the bravest of the brave. He said, yeah, I'm normally okay until you can see the whites of the driver's eyes. That's when I panic.
George, just confirming you're happy to stay out. We've got 3 cars now. Yes. Window. Copy.
Russell going to the end then. on a set of tyres he's already been on for 21 laps. He does like these kind of Hail Mary, go long strategies.
Well, let's see if he still likes it at the end of the race. But he was absolutely crystal clear to his team, wasn't he? These tyres feel all right. Leave it with me. I think, you know, maybe that's his best shot anyway. Norris smashes the fastest lap of the race as he's now back within DRS of his friend and rival, Max Verstappen. And we know what happened the last time.
Lando, these tyres are robust. Happy to push on them.
Good word, robust.
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear.
The medium, a little less robust, and that's what Max Verstappen is going to have to put up with, but he will stay ahead into Les Combes for at least another lap. We're watching George Russell making his way down the hill towards Pouhon, as now we see Verstappen and Norris making their way to Rivage. The track dropping all the way down to its lowest point at Stavelot. From the highest to the lowest, it's a drop of 102 metres.
Yeah, so he's got to push hard. But as I say, we know what happened when these two tried to overtake each other in Austria, but that was for a different scenario, different type of racetrack, and that was for the lead, of course. But on these tyres and these two cars and the talent they both have, you'd think it's advantage Lando Norris here. And then Norris is not that far.
I think Lando's pushing behind me, so let me know what you want me to do.
Yeah, we're happy for you to push now, Max, as well. Happy to push.
Yeah, and he's going to need to push as well. Max said it, Christian Horner said it, Red Bull haven't got the car here that they had 12 months ago. And this is a crucial battle, I think, for the destiny of how this championship plays out after the summer break. If Norris can get ahead of Verstappen, go into that break and close his lead down, albeit by a fraction, once again, what a summer smile, for instance, that might give him. If Verstappen can keep Norris at bay, well, that's damage limitation for Red Bull at a racetrack where they've had to take that grid penalty.
Yeah, Norris is in a nice zone here for not too much dirty air going through Eau Rouge and Radillon, and then get the rear wing open, but he's a long way behind. We know Max has now been freed up to use his full potential of performance, and we're too far away. But yeah, it is, we're way too far away actually. So Max now is able to step on it to these hard compound tyres. It's only well, 12 laps including this one to go. It's a long way here at Spa, isn't it? But you can tell that there's a lot of grip out there. This is quite a punishing race. Hamilton came on the radio ever so slightly breathless. So was Max Verstappen. I would imagine the energy going through the drivers out there with the kind of G-forces and the grip level they've got on this dry afternoon. No safety cars to give them any kind of breather. And also super competitive in the top 8. The drivers are having to go for it.
They know they've been in a race today, and there are battles going on throughout here. We're focusing a little bit, as the cameras were picking them up, on Verstappen and Norris. Piastri is gaining on Charles Leclerc. That battle is going to carry on too. And out in front, George Russell leads this race just under 6 seconds from his teammate Lewis Hamilton. I'm not suggesting that's going to be a battle when Hamilton gets on Russell. Even if Mercedes didn't say move aside, Hamilton's tyres are that much fresher.
They are, but George is still in the low way. He's just done a personal best, but it's 7/10, 3/4 of a second slower than his teammate who's catching him, Lewis Hamilton. But is that enough pace to keep George Russell on the podium?
If Lewis Hamilton passed George Russell and didn't disappear off into the sunshine, kept Russell in DRS to aid his pace, that could keep George Russell on the podium.
Knowing that he wouldn't be attacked. Second, third, and fourth.
All depends who's third.
Yeah.
And it might be the papaya in a little while rather than the scarlet red. And there's Verstappen and Norris. And Verstappen will be deploying extra energy from the electrical systems in his bid to keep Lando Norris at bay, and gets the benefit as well of a better car for the middle sector of the track where we are now. McLaren taking off a bit of rear wing to give them pace down the straights. Red Bull protecting their tyres a bit to go with that strategy of keeping 2 medium tyres for this race through the high-speed corners of the second part of this lap.
So it really depends. I mean, Russell is 14 seconds ahead of Verstappen with 11 laps to go, including this one. They're catching him about a second a lap, so Russell's going to be under pressure from that little gang of Verstappen and Norris as well.
much quicker, don't you? Am I targeting to beat him or not?
It's close. It is close.
That's it.
And he's not talking about Charles Leclerc, is he?
No. He's talking about his teammate George Russell.
Well, I think he's also talking about that man there. I think he's talking about Oscar Piastri. If you look at the pace, and we can do it quite easily here, Hamilton 1:46.8 last lap, Leclerc 1:47.0, Piastri 1:46.5. I think Hamilton feels Piastri is way more of a threat here than either his teammate or Charles Leclerc. Ted Kravitz, are you monitoring team radio?
I am. The beginning of that message was when Lewis was told about Piastri's lap time, and he said, that's insane. How close is it going to be? Then you heard the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, they'll move George away. But if George does then rejoin behind Lewis, or if Lewis catches and then overtakes George, which surely he will do on
Here comes Piastri, Ted. Here comes Piastri into the chicane. He's taken the first opportunity, but he can't make it stick. And he definitely had a go there at Charles Leclerc and just missed out. Back down to you.
George can then do a job for Lewis, which he surely will, just slowing up Leclerc and eventually Piastri, depending on which one is behind Lewis.
Piastri is joining the party here at the last opportunity and is giving Charles Leclerc a torrid time.
10 laps to go. 10 of your finest, mate, come on.
And that is just a battle for 5th place, but it's an important championship battle because Verstappen is keeping his nearest rival very much at bay. What a race this is, Martin Brundle.
Yeah, well, it should evolve beautifully at the end, shouldn't it? Because Hamilton will catch Russell. If Piastri can get past Leclerc, Leclerc's been struggling a little bit for raw pace. But at the moment, he's kind of there or thereabouts. But if Piastri passes him, I think it'll change the face of the race a little bit.
Certainly will. George Russell, 24 laps on these hard tyres, trying to go to the end. Lance Stroll in 10th has been on, in 11th, I should say, has been on his tyres for 21 laps. I wonder if he's trying to go on 22 laps now. He's trying to go to the end of the race as well to try and pick up a 2nd, 10th place finish in 2 races. Here comes Piastri again. Yeah, he's much closer going into the source. Coming out of it, gets a much better exit. He's going to be a threat here.
He's going to have a great chance at the top of the hill, isn't he? So slipstreaming down the hill, he needs to be neat and tidy to pin the throttle. It'll move around a little bit in the turbulent there, but there's enough downforce. Now he's got a great chance. He's in the zone.
Winner last weekend in Hungary. He's trying to get onto the podium this time around. Oscar Piastri with that DRS advantage. Goes to the left of Charles Leclerc. Goes wheel to wheel with Leclerc through the chicane. Neither driver giving this one up. And Piastri wins the battle. He is up into the podium places. He is flying out there.
And it's just put him really in play in this Grand Prix, and that'll catch Mercedes' attention. They're 1 and 2 at the moment with Russell and Hamilton on different strategies, of course, but suddenly Piastri, who's flying, has just released himself to have a go at the 2 Mercedes.
This was brilliant. Brilliant through the chicane. Leclerc knew he was coming, tried to defend, didn't give it up until the very last moment, made it difficult, not impossible. Super racing from both drivers.
Yeah, and they didn't get silly with it either, did they, and start breaking bits off their cars. So good, hard racing.
So the gap between Russell, who leads, and Piastri, 9.5 seconds at the end of lap 35. The gap between Hamilton and Piastri, 5.3 seconds at the end of lap 35. And that's the gap that we'll be monitoring here, and the gap that Mercedes will definitely be monitoring, because Piastri is the threat here.
Yeah, Piastri's kind of lost a lap of charging at them with the overtake there and side-by-side action. So now if he's got a lot more pace, Piastri, he starts delivering it now. He can put Mercedes under pressure.
He's only 5.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. He lost out 2/10 trying to overtake Charles Leclerc on that lap, which isn't very much.
No, it's not, but it wasn't a lap where he closed on them either. So that's what I say. He lost a lap of attack, but at least he's given him some free air as king, as the young Aussie said.
You know what I was saying about George Russell getting a bit of DRS advantage behind Lewis Hamilton? Well, Lewis is going to get a bit of DRS advantage when he closes up to George Russell here as well. And Russell could still win this race if there are no team orders at Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton can't find a way past his teammate. George Russell could still go on and win this race.
Yeah, I mean, George is lap 26 on these tyres now, doing a fine job. He'll get the Fleet Operators Award of the Month, won't he, for keeping those tyres so well.
They look okay.
But Lewis has been relentlessly catching him at 7:10, so he will be with him before a lap or two before the end of the Grand Prix.
Lap 37 of 44. And the top three covered by 9 seconds. Piastri moving clear of Charles Leclerc. Behind the top four, Verstappen still keeping Lando Norris very much at bay, and the strategy hasn't worked out for Lando Norris ever since he was undercut by Verstappen in the first round of the pit stops. The gap was 3.7 seconds out in front at the end of the last lap. As Lewis Hamilton crosses the line, it's now down to 2.8 seconds, and the gap between Hamilton and Piastri 5.6 seconds. Hamilton was faster on that lap than the Australian, the McLaren.
Yeah, if Piastri had a load of speed, he didn't show it on that lap. So that'll be a bit of a sigh of relief for Mercedes, because at the end of the day, Piastri's still quite a long way behind as those laps start reeling off.
Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Talking of Australians, the other Australians moved into the points-paying positions. Daniel Ricciardo was chasing down Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, like his teammate Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin, trying to go to the end on a one-stop. But Ricciardo, on fresher tyres, has caught and passed Stroll and is now 7 seconds behind Alonso. But Ricciardo set to score a point at this stage.
He certainly is. 1:47.4 for the last lap, and he's a second a lap faster than Fernando Alonso ahead of him. Lance Stroll now down into the 150s. They might need to box him. I think those tyres have gone. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, who led this race at one stage, started on the hard tyre and went longer than anyone else, is now catching Sergio Perez in the battle for 7th place. Red Bull with McLaren in 3rd place and Lando Norris currently in 6th. They need Perez to score as many points as he possibly can in the championship. The lead, only 51 points going into this race, with a lot to come in the second half of the season.
It's not actually been a stellar race for Sergio, has it? He's now 21 seconds off the lead, having started on the front row of the grid, and hasn't had any specific problems. They did pit him very early for the second stop, but presumably Russell will let Hamilton through pretty quickly when he gets there, because there's just no point in either of them losing any time whatsoever, and they might just be able to cover off Oscar Piastri, who's now in the 46. He just took a second out of Russell's lead, 7.4 off the lead with 6 laps to go, including the one they're on. Wow, this is going to be, the top three are going to be so close when it gets to the end of the Grand Prix.
And the 2 cars in 7th and 8th are pretty close as well. And where we saw Oscar Piastri get past Charles Leclerc a couple of laps ago, I think we're about to see Carlos Sainz getting past Sergio Perez. Sainz has been closing and closing, and he'll get the DRS advantage going along the Kemmel Straight towards Les Combes as they climb and the track rises towards its highest points. Sainz is closing in on Sergio Perez, really fancies that 7th place. Perez makes it difficult, Sainz goes round the outside, he's ahead. As they move into the chicane, Perez was powerless to defend.
That's sort of, yeah, that's the tail end of the leading pack now, isn't it? So Perez inhabiting that, Sainz through. Poor grid slot for him has really compromised his afternoon, and a little off, of course, through the gravel, but I don't think that compromised him. But now 7 seconds covers the top 3.
Yeah, meanwhile, Verstappen's catching Leclerc, and Norris is very much catching Verstappen, 0.3 faster through the first sector, and on this lap, and Verstappen gets that 0.3 back in the second sector. But Leclerc's under a bit of pressure here from both Verstappen and Norris behind him. Ferrari thought that they might be on for a podium here today. It's not the way it's sadly turning out for them. 5 laps to go, and the gap is down to just over a second. George Russell going long on a one-stop strategy, leading this race, but for how much longer?
Mercedes have got to say to them, yeah, let him through, and Lewis, give him your DRS. We talked about this earlier, didn't we? Yeah. Give him your DRS, and let's make this a glorious Mercedes 1-2 and just hold off Piastri. But they need to do that in a really clean and neat place, which is up there. You don't want Russell to have to go on to the dirty part of the track.
That's a good lap, Oscar. Hamilton's catching Russell ahead. There's going to be action ahead. We want to be there.
0.6 faster on that last lap. Is into the bus stop chicane. Is that the place to swap it around, because then you get the DRS straight away?
No, I think it's... yes, that's not bad. That's not a bad shout, actually. Down the pit straight, elegantly down the pit straight, and then DRS him all the way to the flag if you can. Piastri's coming at them now. So 6 seconds covers the top 3.
And there is George Russell, and there is Lewis Hamilton. George Russell, who in the past here at Spa finished second for his maiden podium in Formula One in a race that wasn't really a race, and where the only excitement happened when Martin Brundle went from his suit to his motorcycle wet weather gear during the course of a commentary, if you remember that day behind the safety car. Today in the bright sunshine, Russell looks like he's on for another podium, and he's having to work hard for it, and we're allowing overtaking today because it's not pouring down the rain. Norris is closer to Verstappen by 1/10 of a second. Hamilton closes in on George Russell under braking. Through then, the final chicane they go, and the gap has come down to a few car lengths. Russell leads from Lewis Hamilton.
Just make sure you give each other plenty of space.
They're allowed to race.
Wow. We shall see. If they're allowed to race, absolutely fantastic. Well done, Mercedes. But you get the feeling George Russell hasn't quite got the grip to fend it off as much as he potentially would have liked.
Fair dues. So, yeah, catching's one thing, passing is quite another, as Murray Walker would say. But you have to think that Lewis has got the pace, but have they got Piastri covered? And that last lap, Piastri took 1.2 seconds out of Russell and 7/10 out of Hamilton. So they've just got to be careful they don't score an own goal here.
Behind this, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris separated by about 1.5 seconds in the battle for 4th place. As we drop down into Pouan and swing left-handed through that glorious corner at about 160 miles an hour. George Russell knows that his teammate is there and could be getting a very nice slipstream up through Blanchimont in a few moments' time towards the bus stop chicane and potentially mounting a challenge to that Russell lead.
Yeah, so Russell's tyres done 30 laps of this challenging racetrack. Hamilton just 14 laps.
It's a super effort, this, from George Russell. It really is, converting from a 2-stop to a 1-stop to give him the best possible chance of a victory or definitely a podium. He's in the lead, but for how much longer? And he looks to be holding Lewis Hamilton off going into that bus stop chicane. And is, comfortably as well. Now, Hamilton gets DRS, drag reduction system, assistance, 12 kilometers an hour down that main straight to propel him even closer to his teammate ahead. Mercedes running 1 and 2 here, and as we approach the summer break, what a turnaround it's been for them during the course of this season, with victories for both drivers and a second on the cards, but for who?
Piastri's catching them like crazy as well, and I think Hamilton is in the sweet spot there.
Hamilton, who waited so long for a victory, is about to challenge his teammate. No, just backs out of it and thinks, no, I'm not going to take any undue risks. He knows that a victory could well be his here, but he doesn't want to do anything too silly at this stage.
So George knows track position. He now knows track position and plenty of battery is enough to defend up into turn 5. Piastri has taken a little bit more out of him on the first sector, and with 3.5 seconds now covers the top 3. There's Piastri.
Piastri gaining on both Mercedes. Verstappen and Norris now about a second behind Charles Leclerc and continuing their fight currently through Pouan. There's about, what, 3-4 car lengths here between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes have had 59 previous 1-2 finishes. The last one was Sao Paulo in 2022 when Russell beat Hamilton. Can Hamilton try and get past Russell here as they now power their way through Blanchimont towards the bus stop chicane? Is Lewis Hamilton close enough to try and mount a challenge at one of the 6 braking zones on this track? I don't think he is, Martin.
Well, Russell's he's got good traction out of the corners. His tyres are fine. He's got to get nice traction out of La Source, get himself a good run down the hill as Piastri gets ever closer to the pair of them.
And you can just see in the background the red of Charles Leclerc. Oh, as they go a little bit deep into that corner. And then Verstappen and Norris, who is much closer to Verstappen than he has been so far in this latest challenge.
They both went a bit deeper, but especially Lewis, I think it's cost him a little bit. He's not so close on the way into Eau Rouge, or out of it indeed. So this is another lap that goes past without an overtaking opportunity.
It's another twist, another surprise here. It looks like George Russell and Team Orders might allow Lewis Hamilton to get past, given how long Russell has been on those tyres. But they've decided at Mercedes, Piastri is too far back to challenge their 1-2, so they're letting them scrap it out. And this is exactly what you want to see as Sergio Perez pits, and that'll be for soft tyres to try and get the fastest lap in this race and take it away from Lando Norris, who's currently got the fastest lap in his possession.
Yeah, the laps are charging down now, aren't they? Piastri's tantalisingly close. But George Russell now knows exactly what he needs to do to stop Lewis Hamilton from taking him at the top of the hill in turn 5.
It's the Russell hustle against hammer time. And this is absolutely thrilling, as here we go again, foot flat to the floor for the two Mercedes, climbing up the hill. And Lewis Hamilton trying to get a slipstream, trying to use that toe. He's not making an impression on George Russell ahead of him. Half a second the gap. And Hamilton needs that down to about 0.2, I think.
Russell knew these tyres would go, didn't he? He'd leave it to me, leave them with me. We're going to one stop, but he's still got great traction coming out into the final lap of the final chicane.
Final lap of the Belgian Grand Prix, 1.6 seconds covers
Lewis
the
locks.
top 3.
Lewis locked up a little bit.
And has that cost Lewis Hamilton his final chance to deny George Russell here today? Dropping then down the hill through Eau Rouge we go, 190 miles an hour. Hamilton is a long way back from making this an easy overtake on George Russell, and I don't think he's close enough to try and mount a challenge. He's had one tentative little look at trying to take the lead here, and there's no way past at the chicane, with Piastri lying in wait if either of these two make a mistake.
Yeah, it's all played out beautifully. Well done to George Russell. He has made this happen, and he's stuck with the tyres. And when it mattered, he found a way to keep his much faster teammate behind him. And Piastri's just not close enough. Extraordinary race.
George Russell started 6th on the grid. That's where he finished here last year as well. Is he going to go from 6th to 1st with an heroic one-stop strategy and running those tyres for 34 laps? Piastri's doing all he can to try and stay within these two. Hamilton being disturbed a little bit by the turbulent air coming off the race leader's rear wing, and that race leader is George Russell. And in a few moments' time, he might be celebrating once again in Formula One, and for the 3rd time in Formula One, celebrating a victory. He inherited a victory in Austria, didn't he, when Verstappen and Norris tangled in the closing stages. He has absolutely fought his way to victory here today. This has been outstanding for George Russell and for Mercedes. It's a 1-2. Russell wins the Belgian Grand Prix. Hamilton comes home to finish in 2nd. Piastri completes the podium, and behind the top 3, even closer for 4th Leclerc, 5th for Verstappen, and 6th for Norris. What an end to this first part of the season for Mercedes, who started on the back foot in Bahrain and have finished up with a 1-2 and winners again.
And a well-earned one too. The car looked great all the way through, and then George Russell called it, didn't he?
Pitch lane the wrong way. So the wrong way down.
Oh, boys and girls, what a performance!
Whoa, well done. Awesome work.
Oh,
Mercedes.
oh yes! Amazing strategy, guys.
He found enough grip at the end. I mean, Hamilton's catching him between 3/4 and a second per lap. They say it takes half a second advantage to pass somebody here. But when he got there, Russell just kept his head and found a technique to be fast in all the right places. Perez did steal the fastest lap point on the final tour, but finishes 8th. And that surely is George Russell's best victory so far in Formula One, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What a way to send yourself into the summer for George Russell and for Mercedes. That's 3 wins in 4 races now for Mercedes. We talk about McLaren being the challengers. Mercedes have absolutely found their their golden touch just before the summer break. Lewis Hamilton, he knows he's been in a fight and a race today. He led the Grand Prix. It looked so comfortable for him. And then his teammate called, what do they call it when the singer calls an audible? I'll do something a little bit different from the set list. I'll come up with a classic of my own.
Yeah.
Perez, as you say, got the fastest lap. Alonso, 9th. Esteban Ocon, 10th. And Daniel Ricciardo finished outside of the points despite running in that top 10 in the latter stages.